the kind of duality in Blake, in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, or whatever. And you've got his statement when Satan speaks. It's all about this idea of acting upon desire and action being called in the Judeo-Christian position evil, but in fact it's really an energy. And there's lots of things that the Erlking says that seem to be he seems to be enticing the child to leave the kind of his traditional kind of role as the son in the family with the father, and come meet my daughters, dance with my daughters. My daughters will in some of the translations my daughters will kiss you, and then later the Erlking starts to say I love you and you're beautiful and I'll take you, and it seems to be there's that sort of he's the God who's saying indulge your desires.
Yes, and it's very much played as the world of nature.
Yeah.
And of our kind of like animal desires, animal drives, that sort of like, and the father, because he's so stuck within his existing worldview, can't see that imminence that's going on. No, it's just the wind in the trees. It's just the grey willow. That's my favourite line in a lot of the in the better translations. This the thing of the female form, being the dancing grey willow tree. That's what he's seeing, a kind of inanimate wooden object dancing in the wind. The hidden threat of nature as a force, to be feared, that's not understood. Man's alienation from nature, and if you don't do what the Erlking desires, he will kill you. Yeah, and riding through the forest by night is terrifying. Yes, and there are many things in the forest that can take your life. The father is scared. By the end of the poem, the father is clearly frightened. Yeah. So perhaps perhaps he's just frightened because his child is so anxious. But maybe all of that's another question that the poem raises, is these explanations that the father gives. Are they credible? Yeah. Given what the child says he's seeing and hearing, can it really be the wind blowing through the leaves? Yeah. I mean, it's a very weak. It's a very weak reassurance when someone's just been telling you a clear and detailed fantasy in your ear, and someone says, "Well, no, it's only the wind." But it's the sort of it is the stock answer that is given to the adult by the adult to the child's question in all of these circumstances. It's just your imagination. Like as if your imagination is sort of like is to be something that should be dismissed. And as if your imagination is not something to be feared. Not an active and terrifying force. In that sense, it's a bit like the nightmare, and the Erlking kind of is this. The Erlking as a poem is this kind of nightmare, riding through the forest and being pursued. And when you're a child and you suffer a nightmare, and you go to your parents, whoever, and say to them, I've had this terrible dream, and they say, well, it was okay because it was only a dream. Go back to bed. It was only a dream, as if that somehow makes it less terrifying. It took place inside your head, like everything else you experienced. That's the other side of the dark god. And stuff. Like, on one hand, he sort of like he brings death, but he also kind of like brings rebirth. Within that. Also the whole thing with Midsummer Night's Dream is that it's Oberon through his people, through his intermediaries, who allows all of the kind of sexual shenanigans of the play to take place. I mean, he's kind of, again, he's sort of
like we were saying at the beginning, he's liberating the desires of the people in the play. By night in the forest.
Yes.
Out in nature.
Yeah.
And allowing them to act beyond the constraints of their norms, their
civilised
usual social situation.
And he does that only in the case of his wife and Bottom. He does this through the kind of like the transformation of them, and also with the deployment of the love potion. They are no longer responsible for their actions during this process. So like, it wasn't me. It was because I'd been glamoured.
Yeah, I was under the influence.
Yeah. The fairies. I was taking the fairies, and I mean, again, that's the kind of thing within that sort of those sort of like generative, festive sorts of things. It's kind of like wide variety of societies is that idea that kind of like, it's not the anything that happens on that night is to be accepted in that sense. But I mean, it's the
what happens in the forest stays in the forest.
The Oberon can be quite dark, but this is the Erlking is absolute. It's desire bringing on kind of like desire into death. It's that sort of like there is no. It's not articulated in the way that that Oberon articulates. It's very much this sort of like the base desire is just sort of like come. If you not come, I will take.
But also it depends how you choose to read the Erlking, because if you're reading him as the other god, then maybe it doesn't work so well. But if you read him just simply as a personification of death as a force, then it's quite common for death to desire you, for death to be a love, for death to come as a lover, for death to come as to death to attempt to entice you into its arms. So there's an element of that too. If the Erlking, perhaps the Erlking doesn't represent rebirth. Perhaps everything the Erlking says is a trick, and everything, and that's the fear from the conventional side anyway, right? Perhaps the road of excess does not lead to wisdom. Perhaps it just leads to oblivion. Even if the Erlking represents death, just purely death. That's only terrifying in a world where you don't look at death as being part of a continuous cycle. Right. So if you come from a pagan tradition of death and rebirth, of cycles of life, then for the force of death to take you is not.
It is to be resisted rather than accepted, because then you'll be reborn as a hare in the field or something like that, in the kind of like
that might be okay. We've been talking about it as he wants to allow the child to he wants to give the child license to express his own desires, but then it becomes clear that it's the boy's beauty, or that there's desire from the Erlking side.
The Erlking wants the boy.
Perhaps more than the Erlking's drive there seems to be greater actually than the child's. The desire is coming more from him.
Obviously, you can kind of there is this sort of like, it is you can read it as a sexual thing, where it is the sort of like, and you could argue perhaps that this is where the true liberation happens only by kind of like indulging in the sort of like absolutely the taboo desire. That kind of like the sort of like the sexual desire you must not have. That then it's only through that you can actually receive the true liberation. Which is.
But then if you read it in that way and you take it to its if you extrapolate that, what you basically say is that the Erlking grants license through the act of sodomizing a child.
Yes. Which is,
in which case perhaps he in fact is the horned god of the Christian tradition.
Yeah. I mean, obviously within the pagan tradition, anybody who follows the horned god too completely comes to a bad end. Yeah, it's the Dionysian. You kind of like you cannot entirely, completely, wholly give yourself over to the other god, because you can't be drunk all the time. You cannot be in a kind of like state of continuous sexual license, and if you go too far along his route, then that's you will end up destroying yourself. In the same way as if you ignore him too much, either he will kind of come with a force.
Yeah. Which is the trajectory of the poem, that the boy refuses the Erlking until such time as ultimately the Erlking comes to take him.
You will, and the same obviously goes for the other alternative. If you deny him successfully, continuously, then you have a very arid existence.
Yeah.
Cut off from desire
and the pleasures of
anything.
Yeah. One more thing to mention in relation to that idea. Is it the Erlking that's coming near? No, it's a body of cloud, or it's the mist.
Yeah.
Is it the Erlking speaking, or is it the wind rustling through the leaves, or perhaps it's all simultaneously this?
Yeah.
The Erlking is the voice of the wind that whistles through the leaves, and the Erlking's daughters are the willows in the forest. These things, the Erlking being the force of nature, being death which exists within nature, being mortality encoded into the biological mechanism of the human body. It's not one or the other. The Erlking is all these things.
Yeah, it is a sort of like by dying, and then you return to the animal world.
Yeah,
you're kind of like this is this sort of like the cycle of life. You're kind of like you're reborn as the kind of like hare in the field or whatever, and it's your kind of and you can't escape that destiny. And then you attempt to cheat it or circumvent it, and you end up as Faust did.
Absolutely. But if you can reconcile yourself to the idea of life, of cycles of life, then you need not fear it.
No,
because you're only rejoining what you lost through your birth as a human.
Yes. Yeah, you're back, and you kind of like you're dead, and the worms will eat you, and they'll plant their own tree out of your grave, and all that sort of stuff, and you will be and you will be able to act like water in water again. You will be back within the animal realm, where you will be. All of these sort of like concerns of humanity will no longer. You will no longer have to worry about, and you can be.
In that sense,
be in the field and play all day.
Yeah, this thing about the Erlking also has fear. It's like that idea that the only way to truly conquer your fear is for the worst possible thing to happen. It's a little bit like what you were saying with the extreme transgressive act.
Yes.
It's like ultimately, if you escape the Erlking now, he'll come for you later.
Yeah, sooner or later he'll come back. Same as the kind of death in Death in the Seventh Seal. It's sort of like, and it's only when you have achieved, the knight has achieved wisdom to understand and accept his own death, that death actually takes him. Death brings knowledge. In that sense.
I reckon we're done.
Yeah.